Hello and welcome to the Apple, iPhone, iOS Voiceover Compatible Games interview series. I'm your host, Aaron Spelker, and we have a great guest today in Henrik Lindfors, who is the lead designer of the game Warlocks of Largefearn. He is coming to us all the way from Sweden, so we'd like to welcome Henrik.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here, and it's always fun to talk about the weird little experiences that we create here at WanderWord. That is audio games.
Yes, no, and I was reading up a little bit about you. I mean, you have kind of a beginning not in games, but in actually doing radio. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that journey of how you got started and then how you ended up where you are right now.
Yeah, sure thing. So I was not the best kid in school, the very creative nerd, if you will, who mostly draw figures in the calculus books and stuff of that nature. So I finished school with horrible grades and I had nowhere to go, basically. So I just I slept on the sofa for quite a few years, just doing the odd jobs here and there. And one day I was offered an internship at a radio studio. So I joined up as an intern at a radio studio, and I was entering that whole industry via the School of Hard Knocks. My manager placed me in front of a board and basically told me he was grabbing a coffee and we'd be back in 20 minutes. And there I was being forced to switch out the songs and say something on air. So I was stuck at that place for like 12 years, but radio, as much as newspapers aren't doing too great last couple of years, so my studio was forced to shut down.
So you were an actual like DJ?
Yeah, I did a whole, it's a small outfit, so you have to wear a lot of hats.
Do everything.
I did some news, I did some actual DJing, I did some quizzes, musical quizzes on radio with prizes and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So a little bit of everything, really. Nice. But after that, after 12 years, I was out of a job again. So just so happens that a video game design school was opening up. Now you have to understand, I'm in northern Sweden, so we have a town of about 30,000 people, basically in the middle of nowhere. So this school for video games was really an odd opportunity for me. So I jumped aboard and I did my 2 years at a video game school. And by the end of those 2 years, I was offered internships, and this studio called WanderWord was opening up. And me, with my audio background from radio, I applied, seeing as their job description was really, we're making interactive audio. So I jumped aboard, and I've been here for a couple of years now. I started off as an intern, obviously, then working my way up to junior sound designer, senior sound designer, and now I'm lead designer for the studio.
All right. Oh, well, that's excellent. So, with the audio kind of game focus, I know you kind of started doing games on the Alexa, and this game, the Warlocks of Largefearn, started on the Alexa. You then ported it over to the iPhone. What was the decision making there? Like, why did you not decide not to just stay on the Alexa? Why expand out further to the iPhone?
Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, at the very beginning, we started out with a few prototypes for Android and iOS, but really we got we had this contact at Amazon, and they really sort of opened their doors to the smart speaker, their Alexa. And we started making games for the Alexa, and Warlocks of Largefearn, much like you say, was really originally made for the both the Alexa and the Google Nest, so smart speakers, really. And we wanted to try the mobile market, really see how things worked, if it's possible at all to port a game originally made for a smart speaker to a mobile phone. So we put in some engineering hours, and from a technical perspective, it might sound like an easy thing to do, but just no. Consider the the microphone on the phone. And if the screen goes black, for example, I mean, the microphone normally shuts off. But with our games, they're narratively driven, long form spoken word kind of thing. So sometimes you have to listen for 3 or 4 minutes before you get to do a choice.
Right.
And the screen will actually go into sleep mode, and thus turning off the microphone. So there was a lot of technical hoops to jump through. Ultimately, we did managed to put it onto both Android and iOS. Unfortunately, I think it's better suited for a smart speaker, if nothing else, for the simple fact that if you're an owner of a smart speaker, you already know the way how to engage with that device. You do that by voice, and the smart speaker says something back to you. Now, with an audio game on a cell phone for the broad audience, they're used to clicking on the screen. They're used to looking at the screen. It's all, you know, the kind of input by touch and a visual medium. So the onboarding process and getting the, you know, average Joe to understand that this is an audio game on a cell phone, that has been quite a challenge, to be honest. But we are very glad that we tried, and for the next couple of titles, we know how to approach it better.
Yeah, you know, what I really like about it is it kind of gives this multi-layer of accessibility. So, you know, if you are a person who, you know, maybe have a hand deformity, I mean, you could still play this game on your phone by just having the, you know, voice command prompts, you know, tell you now it's time to say what command you want to do. Or if you want to, you know, blind like myself and you want to use voiceover, you can do that as well. So it kind of opens it up to even a wider audience by having these kind of multi-layer of ways to be able to access the game, where other games just have, you know, the voiceover functionality. They don't have the voice command functionality that your game has. So I really kind of appreciate that multi-layer to it.
Yeah, quickly on that topic, I mean, really, when we started the whole company and our foray into audio games, our primary goal was really to allow players to enjoy games of all manners, shapes, and sizes. For example, in their car while driving to work, or, you know, riding their bikes, or doing the dishes in spaces that are not originally intended for playing games, really. But what we soon came to discover, much to your point, was really, because we got a lot. Sorry, I'm gonna have to keep my emotions in check, because it's we got a lot of letters from people who were visually impaired, saying that they had never come across a game that was so, let's say, not sorry, language barriers, so you'll have to excuse me, but it didn't look down on the visually impaired community. Because some games, as I'm sure you know way better than me, some games that are designed specifically for the vision impaired community, if they are designed by a vision enabled person, if you will, they sometimes make them a little too easy. They almost look down. I'm struggling to find the words here.
So, well, I was going to jump in with it's, you know, they make it way too simplistic. You know, there's almost no fun value in it, because it's, you know, almost a toddler could do it, and I'm an adult. So,
and our main objective was really to make enjoyable games that are played through sound and voice. And by just approaching it that way, we got a lot of love from the visually impaired community, and we have since then way more started to talk with the community, with people like yourself doing YouTube videos or Twitch streams or what have you, and really walking more hand in hand with that community, if you will, because they love us and we truly love them. I mean, something you might not know is actually I'm blind on one eye, so I had this accident when I was a small child. So while my remaining eye has full functionality, I'm on my last continue, if you will, in regards to video game terms here. Like I was so close in actually ending up blind myself. So I have a lot of sympathy for that target group, if you will.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there is something that's really satisfying about playing a game that has complexity, you know, that it, as you said, it's not kind of dumbed down or too simplistic, you know, for the blind community, because, you know, we're people who love games just like anybody else who loves games, and we want something that's going to be compelling and interesting and challenge us. So when we get a game that, you know, is, you know, more advanced and has more complexity and has multiple quests and puzzles and, you know, RPG strategy battle, you know, mechanics, those are things that, you know, really are well received and really are appreciated, because we don't see very many games that are like that for one reason or the other.
One problem is, though, that you guys are way too good. Like, seriously. if we make like a slightly too difficult game in accordance to me, we would have people from the blind community be like, oh, this is just perfect, but every other player out there will be like, this is way too hard, because obviously, like, you guys hear the details, you seem to have a lot better random access memory in accordance to listening to a longer form narrative, because you are simply way more used to listening to synthesized voices and things of that nature.
I find I'm
So
getting better at the audio puzzles too, like in your game where you have to kind of match up the sounds. I'm like nailing those in like this, one first or second try. I'm getting those right down. So,
it's a difficult balancing act, but I hope we manage to pull it off with the Warlocks of Largefearn.
now, for those who may not know, Warlocks of Largefearn is an existing IP from the Bard's Tale universe. So, how did you get access to do something in that world as opposed to just doing something that was, your own unique thing?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of fans of the franchise in the office. It's a long-running franchise. They started with the first 3 games, early 80s, somewhere. They kickstarted the 4th Bard's Tale 2016, and they're generically speaking, they're these role-playing games called like dungeon crawlers. So you explore dungeons, solve puzzles. But one thing the games always had going for it was the sound. I mean, Bard's Tale, the original Bard's Tale game, was one of the first games that had music, I believe, because they managed to just hack their way into the chip files and stuff like that. I can't remember, but they had music, and it was very original for its time. And Bard's Tale 4 from 2016, they spent so much money on that music, and it really paid off. It's great music, and basically, to your point, we have some senior people in the office and in our board who has contacts in the gaming industry, and basically we simply approached Brian Fargo of In Exile, who owns the IP. They're the ex Interplay people, most of them, or some of them at least. So we basically utilized contacts and got in touch with them and told them, like, Bard's Tale, with its focus on audio historically, would make a great audio game, because we would just we could imagine the way it would work. So we put together a pitch and we pitched it to them, and they let us have the license. And so we don't own it, obviously, not the entire franchise. It's just we were allowed to create this game inside of that franchise. Yeah.
And how does the story that you're telling there fit into the overall world? Is it kind of separately carved out, or is there Easter eggs of mentioning characters that have been in the longer running series? Like how connected or not connected is it to the existing storyline?
Yeah, seeing as we don't have any prior companionship with In Exile, the studio In Exile, they were a little afraid to allow us to make any direct impact on the story and overall narrative. So what we really did
don't want to change canon, right?
Exactly. Like you wouldn't allow just anyone to make the next Star Wars movie, because that sort of thing. But anyway, what we did was we took the world of Bard's Tale 4, which is set in a particular city, which is under duress. So this story in Bard's Tale 4 is basically, you have this church that are really pseudo racist. They try to banish magic. They try to banish the other human races from the town, and so on and so forth. So our game is a sort of secluded village where people flee when they flee from that town in Bard's Tale 4. So by boat, you basically you escape that city of Bard's Tale 4, and you end up in our city, which is a sleepy little harbor town, and it's basically very, very separated. So when it comes down to any characters or to your point, like Easter eggs, there's not too many. We wanted to keep it a little distance to respect the IP, because that's basically it.
So when you brought this over to the iPhone, obviously you could have just let it be just voice command. I know you ended up adding buttons that people could touch, and then obviously adding the voiceover accessibility to those buttons. How were you even aware? Was it just your experience of getting to know blind people through the Alexa who played the game and made comment that you knew that when you brought it over to the iPhone that here's a group that would probably want to play it and we should make sure it's accessible? Or did you learn about the need for accessibility in some other way?
I mean, again, when we started making the port for iOS and Android, we really we already knew about the blind community. We had been in contact with them, but the buttons really, I have to admit this, I would love to have said anything else, but really the buttons were mostly there because if someone is, let's say, on the bus and wants to play the game, he or she should not be forced to say like attack, sitting
Right.
on the bus, or
Have people
even
look at them.
worse, yeah, playing like a detective novel thriller, sitting in an airport screaming defuse the bomb. I mean,
Right.
anything could happen really. So we just wanted to have the option in there to allow people that are in a situation where they want to press a button that, the button is there. And while we did place buttons in there, we wanted to make sure that you can actually, via screen reader, see or read that button also.
Did you, it sounds like this is your first foray into the iPhone. So was there a lot to learn about, incorporating accessibility? Did you, have to self-teach yourself how to, make all that kind of aspect of the game work?
Yes, I mean there are a lot of back end and highly technical differences between the Android and the iOS. So there was a lot of challenges, of course. We are piggybacking on the phone's own speech recognition, for example. So then Siri, as opposed to the Google Assistant on Android phones, they do have some highly technical differences between them, and we needed to adjust accordingly, obviously. So there was again quite a lot of challenges, but at least it's out there.
So we know that you're in Sweden. How big is the entire WanderWord team that's out there and making games that for the Alexa and the iPhone?
So we're a team of about, some are working 25%. So it's how much is a person?
Right.
No, but really, like we're somewhere between 15 and 20 people all in all. Most of us are here in northern Sweden. We have some folks down in Stockholm, and we have a few over in America as well, helping us to reach out via marketing and stuff like that. But mostly we're situated up here in northern Sweden, some 12 to 15 strong locally up here.
So with a team of that size, from the point where you're pitching, to the owners of Bard's Tale, hey, we want to make a game, to being able to release it out on, the iPhone or the Androids, how long did that whole process take to make the game?
Yeah, so like you would normally think that producing an audio game, as opposed to a quote unquote normal game for like Xbox or Steam or what have you, would be a lot quicker. But the thing is, with communication, because once you're dealing with a license, you need to make sure that everything is above water and you get approvals for stuff, and that communication can still cause a lot of delays. But all in all, the team for the Bard's Tale, the game itself, there was around 3 people working on the game, and then we had some extra personnel helping in porting the game and stuff like that. So we do have a lot of projects that we're running at the same time. So making the game, that's about 3 to 5 people, if you will. And we are also working on, I mean, I only say this because the tool we work with that allows us to create the interactive audio stories is a public tool that we made ourselves. So we have a bunch of people developing that simultaneously as we make games as well. It's called Fabella, and it's you might help me here, but hopefully it's very accessible for visually impaired people. So you should theoretically be possible to use screen readers and create an experience much like Bard's Tale yourself using that engine.
Nice. when you are, creating the game using that engine, what's kind of the process for you? Is it, do you write out the whole script first of what you want to do and then kind of build the mechanics around it? Or do you, fool around with creating different mechanics and then fitting that into different parts of the game? Like what's kind of the general approach that you guys take?
I mean, seeing as the manuscript, the written word in a text document is really it's our everything. Just like in a normal game where you have your 3D renderer and your graphics engine. I mean, the written dialogue and the written narrative is pretty much our descriptive tool here, because we use words and speech to describe your environments. So we do start off normally with the script itself. Now we start off by an elevator pitch, like shortly describing the story in its entirety throughout like 3 or 4 pages. And then we just delve into that and expand upon it. And at that point, we know which kind of environments are needed. So let's say we have a short form narrative of the entire story, and we know that takes place, let's say, on a sandy beach. The crew of audio engineers can get started very quickly in creating, the sandy beach ambiance sounds. And then we have, as we fine tune the script and expand on the script, we also expand on whatever is needed from a design perspective in sound. And in the case of Bard's Tale, where we do have quite a heavy system, a gamified system in the combat, for example, that is something that we will create simultaneously fairly early, because it's not directly tied into the narrative per se, because it's a combat system. So some things can run in conjunction with each other. Yeah, in tandem.
So, you've obviously, whether it be audio games that you do on the Alexa or what you've ported over to the phone, you've created an accessible game for the the blind community. What are kind of the overall challenges of creating an accessible game? And there are so few games out there, really, considering the amount of games that are released each day. There's very few that are fully accessible to the blind community. What do you think are the hangups or the roadblocks that prevent game developers from putting the effort in to make a game accessible?
Yeah. So it's pretty much, I would say it's kind of a mindset, a design pillar, if you will, because I mean, our design pillars are always, you should be able to play the game heads up and hands free. That's our motto. Each and every product we create must be able to be played hands up and heads up and hands free. Sorry, language barriers. But basically, you should be able to ride your bike with your phone in your back pocket and play the game, or driving the car, or what have you. So with that in mind, every visuals that we have in there, each of the images that are supportive in nature are just that, supportive in nature. If you do happen to want to look at the screen, there should be a picture of a person that you might be talking to. But at the same time, that person should be described to you through spoken word, like you are talking to a lady with white hair and a brimmed hat. She's old and, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So the descriptive word needs to be there, and the images, again, are supportive. So that's just, I believe it's a motto, really, that differentiates us from other companies.
So, I completed the Warlocks of Largefearn, and it kind of leaves you on a cliffhanger. So, where are we going from here with the storyline?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking. Yes, it was, as I'm sure you are aware of, most games today are not unfinished, but they're always rushed. Each and every game out there is rushed because it's a passion industry. We always want to put in more effort and more love into the stuff we make, obviously. So what we had in mind is really to continue the story and have the players traverse. If you guys watching this are familiar with the game, there's a broken bridge north of the Alchemist, and we intended to have that bridge fixed, and you would be able to traverse into a section of the city which has been ruined, because the city is really plagued by sinkholes, mysterious sinkholes. So you have an entire district that has collapsed in on itself and is in ruins and has been deserted and basically walled up. So you cross this bridge and you enter this not abandoned, but deserted district, and it's haunted. And we continue the story from there, also while introducing some 2 new companions. Our end goal here was to have 4 companions, 1 companion for each of the player classes. So we have a rogue and we have a sorcerer still that needs to be there, have their slots filled.
And so is that, is your plan kind of episodic releases, every, whatever the schedule may be, every 6 months you release, the next kind of step in the storyline, the next chapter? Is that kind of the plan? And how many chapters, if that is, how many chapters do you expect to release?
I would love to be able to answer that. I know how many chapters I would like to release, but that's
well, you're the lead designer, so let's hear it. What would you like to do?
No, but really, it's basically we're at the point where we wanted to test it out on Android and iPhone simultaneously as having it on smart speakers, which means that basically we're seeing how people react to it, and depending on whether or not it's well received, we know how much extra time and effort we can afford to put into the game. Now, we do aim to have a continuation, absolutely. Now, whether or not that continuation will be the end of the story, or there will be 2 more continuations, that remains to be seen. And basically, it's up to the data we receive. So what I'm saying is basically, if you like the game, feel free to give it a nice little, 5-star rating, and chances are very much higher that we'll do more with it.
Now, how do you get your game? I mean, with like 1,000 games released a day, how do you get your game heard above the noise? As do you leverage the Bard's Tale IP, and that that's how you kind of get the word out, or what are the ways that you get your game heard above all the other games that are released, every week?
Yeah. No, so I mean, basically, obviously the upside of working with an existing license is that you get the existing fans on board. So that has been a little bit of a challenge as well, because seeing as it's an audio game, it will naturally differ a lot from the original games. I mean, there's no going about that. So managing player expectations, that's always a challenge when you're working with a pre-existing license like this. But really, there's radio spots, Spotify radio ads, or putting in ads in other types of skills on the smart speakers, and just as ye ordinary marketing really is just getting out there, talking to people like you, for example, or streamers. Yeah, every little bit helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we're kind of coming up at the end of our available time. So, I'd just like to always give the developers, kind of the last word of, your thoughts on, gaming and accessibility, and the future things that you might be working on that you'd like us to know about.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, first of all, I think it's a great little niche working in audio games overall here, because when it comes down to all the other companies, the PlayStations, the Xbox, or what have you, they all target the same 3 hours of your ordinary day, really. You get home from work or school, you fix dinner, you take care of the kids, and once you're done with everything, you have like 3 more hours before you need to hit the hay, really. So they all target those 3 hours. But audio games, again, play them in the car, on the bus, wherever you might be, doing the dishes, fixing dinner, what have you. You can play the audio games, and I think that's a great opportunity. And if you like anything of what we do, really, especially the Bard's Tale, we do have a lot of interesting stuff incoming. I mean, really, we're working on 2 projects right now that I can't unfortunately mention by name just yet, but they are world-renowned licenses, and one of those is also like an interactive adventure narrative with RPG mechanics. So if you like Bard's Tale, you'll like that one.
And hopefully accessible as well. The plan.
Again, everything we make is playable by voice only and just by listening to the sound. So
now, is that going to be on the Alexa, or is that going to be also on the iPhone?
That's going to be on the iPhone and Android.
Nice.
So yes, it's coming your way.
Well, definitely, feel free at any time to reach out to me and let me know the updates so I can share it with the community, or if you're more than welcome to join our Facebook group as well and post directly about any updates you have, just to keep people informed. You're always welcome to let us know about the things that you're up to.
Thank you. And I'm sure we'll be seeing again sometime this summer when we have something to tell you.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, again, Henrik, thank you so much for your time speaking with us all the way from Sweden. And thanks for creating an accessible game that was, really fun and enjoyable, and, had layered complexity as well as layered accessibility. We, again, as I speak for the blind community, we really appreciate games that, add a little bit more value and a little bit more interest and a little bit more compelling to play. So again, we really appreciate your efforts.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah.